The river narrowed where the cliffs leaned toward one another, creating a natural gate between two provinces that had been at war for longer than anyone could recall. Dawn light spilled across the valley, touching the water with a pale golden shimmer. Mist drifted between the rocks, softening the thunder of hooves rising from the eastern bank. The soldiers of the northern provinces had been marching since midnight, hoping to reach the ford before the tide surged. But when they rounded the last bend, they saw a great warship anchored in the middle of the channel, its hull hacked with armored men, its mast carrying archers ready to rain death upon anyone who approached. The ship belonged to the Southern Alliance, whose armies had been trying for weeks to keep the Northerners from crossing. For both sides, the river was more than a boundary, it was a lifeline. Whoever secured it would control the grain routes, the iron mines, and the trade roads stretching into the east. But now, on this fragile morning, the struggle had reached its boiling point. On the deck of the ship, soldiers pressed shoulder to shoulder, their helmets glinting sharply. They had been waiting since nightfall, their commanders predicting the Northerners' movements with uncanny precision. An archer stood half-hidden in the lookout tower, bow drawn, scanning the river banks for the first sign of movement. His breath formed thin clouds as he exhaled slowly, the tension of the string humming in his fingers. Just then, a trumpet's cry shattered the calm. Riders burst into view from the eastern shore, their banners snapping, horses kicking up sprays of river mud. Their commander, clad in a cloak the color of deep morning skies, raised his sword and shouted an order. Foot soldiers charged from behind him, clambering over the rocks and splashing into the water. Some carried shields held high, others waded forward with spears raised, determined to reach the floating fortress. The Southern troops aboard the ship braced themselves. Archers released a volley of arrows that whistled through the air and struck the water with deadly accuracy. Yet the Northerners surged forward undeterred. The first few horses stumbled in the current, but pushed on, nostrils flaring as arrows hissed past their ears. One white horse lost its footing entirely, slipping beneath the surface before resurfacing with a violent shake, carrying its rider closer to the ship. At the river's edge, the struggle intensified. Men leapt from the rocks onto the slanted planks extending from the ship's hull, trying to board before the Southerners could push them back. Steel clashed, shields cracked, and cries of fury echoed off the canyon walls. A soldier in blue and crimson armor seized the edge of the plank and swung himself upward, only to be knocked aside by a blow from a waiting defender. He fell into the water with a splash that sent droplets flying in every direction. Among the chaos, a young soldier named Arlen found himself caught between fear and duty. This was his first real battle. Only days ago, he had been a farmer's apprentice, more familiar with wheat sheaves than with warships. But the Northerners had conscripted every able hand, and Arlen had marched with the rest, hoping somehow to survive. Now he clung to a rock near the riverbank, watching men twice his size throw themselves at the wooden walls of the ship. Near him stood a grizzled veteran whose beard had turned silver with age. Without looking at Arlen, he muttered, "If we don't take that ship, boy, we won't see the next sunrise." Then he charged forward, sword lifted high. Arlen swallowed hard, wiped the spray from his face, and forced himself to follow. The defenders aboard the ship pulled back as a new wave of Northerners swarmed the lower deck. The wooden floorboards groaned under the weight of so many armored bodies, pushing, grappling, and swinging blades in tight quarters. One Southerner lost his footing and tumbled backward into the river, his armor dragging him down instantly. Another tried to lower the ship's gangplank to give his men a path to retreat, but one arrow struck him before he could complete the task. On the western shore, reinforcements for the Southern Alliance arrived, horsemen in bright colors, their capes fluttering like banners. They rode into the fray with desperate urgency, trying to reach the ship and turn the tide. Some leapt from their saddles